Suddenly facing a major failure after 40. Does it feel like the sky is collapsing on top of you? Maybe you lost a job you held for decades. Maybe your business didn't survive. Maybe a relationship you believed would last forever came to an end. And now, instead of just dealing with the practical consequences, you're battling something much heavier. The fear that this one failure has defined who you are at this stage of life. Setbacks feel different. When you're 25, people say you have time. When you're 30, they say it's experience. But after 40, the voice inside your head might say, you should have figured this out by now. That voice can be relentless. It can make you question your judgment, your competence, even your worth. If that's where you are right now, I want you to hear this clearly. One failure is an event. It is not your identity. It is something that happened. It is not who you are. In this conversation, we're going to explore 6 powerful, practical ways to reinvent yourself after 40. Not by pretending the pain didn't happen. Not by forcing unrealistic positivity. But by rebuilding step by step in a way that reflects your experience, your maturity, and your strength. Let's begin with something foundational. The first way to reinvent yourself is to separate your identity from your outcome. When something falls apart, most of us don't say, that project failed. We say, I failed. We attach our self-worth to the result. And once that attachment forms, every future step feels terrifying because it feels like your entire identity is at risk again. But imagine your closest friend sitting across from you at 48 and saying, my company went under. I'm a failure. Would you agree with them? Of course not. You would see their integrity, their work ethic, their kindness, their years of contribution. You would see a whole person, not a single mistake. You deserve that same perspective. Reinvention begins when you draw a clear line between who you are and what happened. You are more than your worst year. You are more than your biggest loss. You are more than one chapter in a very long story. Once you begin to separate identity from outcome, the second shift becomes possible. Taking ownership without drowning in shame. Ownership is empowering. Shame is paralyzing. Shame says, I'm incompetent. Ownership says, what can I learn? After 40, you have something incredibly valuable, lived experience. Even painful experiences carry lessons. Maybe you trusted someone you shouldn't have. Maybe you avoided difficult conversations. Maybe you stayed too comfortable for too long. Looking at these truths doesn't mean attacking yourself. It means gathering information. And information gives you power. I once spoke with a woman in her early 50s who lost a senior management role during a corporate restructure. She felt betrayed and humiliated for months. She replayed every conversation in her head. But when she stepped back honestly, she realized she had stopped building external professional connections. She had assumed loyalty alone would protect her. That insight didn't erase the pain, but it changed her strategy. She began networking intentionally, updating her skills, and within 2 years, she built a consulting career that gave her more flexibility and control than before. Ownership helped her move forward. Shame would have kept her frozen. The third step in reinventing yourself after 40 is redefining success for this stage of your life. Many of us have been chasing a definition of success we inherited in our 20s or 30s, a title, a salary, a certain image. And when that image cracks, it can feel like everything is lost. But here's a powerful question. Does that old definition still fit who you are today? At 30, success might have meant climbing the ladder quickly. At 45, it might mean stability, freedom, health, or meaningful work. Your priorities evolve. Your values deepen. And that's not failure. That's growth. I've seen people walk away from high-status roles not because they couldn't handle them, but because they realized the constant pressure was draining their joy. I've seen professionals pivot into smaller ventures, teaching roles, advisory positions, or passion projects that align better with their current values. Reinvention after 40 is not about proving something to the world. It's about aligning your life with who you become. As you redefine success, something important begins to shift inside you. The failure that once felt like a verdict starts to feel like a turning point. You begin to see it not as the end of your story, but as a signal that something needed to change. And as we continue this conversation, we'll go deeper into the emotional and practical steps that help you build that new chapter with clarity and confidence. Once you've separated your identity from the failure and taken honest ownership, something else becomes essential: rebuilding trust in yourself. After a major setback, many people over 40 quietly lose confidence in their own judgment. You may hesitate to make decisions. You may second-guess yourself constantly. That hesitation can slowly stall your progress. Rebuilding self-trust doesn't happen through big announcements. It happens through small, consistent actions. Think about it this way. If you promise yourself you'll wake up at 6:30, and you hit snooze repeatedly, a tiny crack forms in your self-trust. If you say you'll update your resume and you avoid it for weeks, that crack widens. But when you keep small promises to yourself, you begin repairing that trust. Start simple. Commit to one manageable daily action: a 20-minute walk, sending one networking email, spending 30 minutes learning a new skill, organizing your finances for 15 minutes each evening. These small acts may not look impressive from the outside, but internally, they rebuild something powerful: your belief that you can rely on yourself. I remember speaking to a man in his late 40s who felt completely lost after closing his business. Instead of trying to launch another company immediately, he started with structure. Every morning, he dressed as if he were going to an office. He worked on skill development for 2 hours. He exercised daily. Within months, that routine restored his discipline and confidence. His next venture was built on steadier ground. Another key part of reinvention is choosing your environment wisely. After failure, it's tempting to isolate yourself. You might feel embarrassed. You might assume others are judging you. But isolation magnifies negative thoughts. Who you spend time with matters deeply at this stage. Surround yourself with people who challenge you constructively, not those who reinforce your fears. Seek conversations that focus on growth, not gossip. This doesn't mean you need a large circle. Even one or two supportive individuals can make a huge difference. A mentor who has navigated setbacks. A friend who listens without judgment. A professional group aligned with your goals. Connection reminds you that you are not alone. And often, hearing someone else's story of reinvention gives you courage to continue yours. There's another quiet shift that often needs to happen after 40. Letting go of outdated self-images. Sometimes the pain of failure isn't just about what happened. It's about who we thought we were. Maybe you saw yourself as the unshakable provider, the high achiever, the dependable leader. When reality contradicts that image, it can feel like an identity crisis. But growth requires evolution. The version of you at 25 is not the same as the version at 45. And that's a good thing. You are allowed to update your identity. You are allowed to be wiser, calmer, more selective, more balanced. Letting go of an outdated self-image doesn't mean giving up ambition. It means making space for a more authentic version of yourself. And as you do this inner work, something subtle begins to happen. You stop trying to go back to who you were before the failure. Instead, you start asking, who am I becoming now? That question changes everything. Because reinvention is not about restoring the past. It's about building something stronger with the lessons you've earned. As we move into the final part of this conversation, we'll bring all of these pieces together in a way that helps you step forward with confidence, not fear. At some point in this journey, you may realize something surprising. The failure that once felt like the end may actually be the doorway to a more honest life. After 40, time feels more real. You become more aware that your energy is precious. That awareness can either create panic or clarity. And clarity is what fuels meaningful reinvention. One of the most powerful ways to reinvent yourself now is to focus on contribution rather than comparison. When you compare yourself to others, especially at this age, you may feel behind. But when you shift your focus to contribution, how you can serve, help, create value, your energy changes. Instead of measuring yourself constantly, you start building momentum. Maybe you mentor someone younger in your field. Maybe you share your lessons openly. Maybe you volunteer or consult in a way that uses your hard-earned experience. Contribution rebuilds confidence because it reminds you that you still have something valuable to offer. Another essential piece of reinvention is patience with yourself. We live in a culture that glorifies quick comebacks. But real reinvention after 40 is often steady and quiet. It might take months or even years to fully reshape your career, finances, or personal life. And that's okay. Progress is not always dramatic. Sometimes it's simply refusing to give up. If you're rebuilding right now, I want you to reflect honestly. What has this failure taught you about yourself? What strengths did it reveal? What illusions did it remove? These answers are not weaknesses. They are tools. Remember, even the smallest changes today can make a huge difference in your future. One new habit, one courageous conversation, one decision to try again. If this message resonates with you, I'd love to hear your story. What chapter are you rewriting right now? What setback are you transforming into a lesson? Share it in the comments. Your experience might encourage someone else who feels alone in their struggle. And if this conversation gave you clarity or hope, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. This space is for honest discussions about growth, resilience, and building a meaningful life after 40. You are not defined by one failure. You are defined by your willingness to rise again. Wishing you strength, wisdom, and courage as you continue writing your next chapter. Your story is not over. In many ways, it may just be beginning.